Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:50 a.m. East Coast time. It is Wednesday, October 23rd. And yes, the NBA started yesterday. It was fantastic. About a 10 to 15% profit day in the NBA for myself. 75% Pascal Siakam will do that for you. So, man's a monster. Should never be priced that low, even on a two-game slate. But now we get 11 games. A huge NBA slate. Some of the biggest NBA slates you'll ever see are this size. The best slates are probably around 8 or 9 games. 11-game slate we get here. And as for always, there will be injury news that we'll touch on. We'll get into some of the target offense sheet, what these matchups look like, and then we'll get into some of the players, my early interests. Not my complete player pool, nowhere near it. We don't have enough time for that. But if you do want something like that, if you want to see my entire model and projections, you can click the link down below in my description on Patreon. But welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Sal Vetri, and yes, I do cover daily fantasy sports in the NBA streets, NFL, so both going on right now. Thank God the NBA is back. MLB and WNBA streets. You can check out all the stuff in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. We just crossed 13,000 subscribers the other day. We're on the way to 14,000 and 15, and then so on and so forth. So appreciate if you get any value from this video. If you could hit the subscribe button. Good chance you might be new finding me. A new NBA season, just a new season in general. Maybe new people stumbling upon my channel. Stay, hang around, join it, whatever you got to do. If you have any interest or any value from this, please hit the subscribe button. People listening on the audio version of this podcast, how's it going? Hope those ears are doing well. If you have any time to take a couple seconds just to do a 5-star review and rate, you'll be entered into a fantasy draft contest. And if the people watching the video want to do this, fantasy draft contest for an entry into their main event this coming weekend, usually a value of around $25 to $28 is what it costs to join that. You'll get it for free. You'll be one of 3 random people chosen at the end of the week on Saturday. So, hit the subscribe button. All the stuff's in the description below. Really appreciate you all tuning in. And yeah, let's get into it. So it's an 11-game slate, and as you can imagine, even on a 2-game slate, but on an 11-game slate, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. So don't just watch this video. If you're new to NBA DFS, if you watch this video and you set your lineup in the morning, you're going to lose about 90-95% of the time, especially early in the season. You have to be watching right up until lock. The injury news, the status changes. Yesterday we had Patrick Patterson start a game when he wasn't really supposed to. We had Rajon Rondo ruled out later in the day. Things like that just on a 2-game slate. When there's now like 18 more teams, you'd be damn sure that a lot of things are going to be wonky. So even though the injury reporting now has to come out 30 minutes before lock in the NBA, which is good, that means you have to at least tune in until then, and then even before that to see what starting lineups look like. Everything in terms of minutes projections that I'll be doing in my model, and everybody in general at this point, is all based on assumptions of 1, couple of injuries, and 2, what these guys are going to be doing in terms of the head coaches with their rotations. So nothing is totally secure just yet. So that's just sort of the disclaimer with all this. But let's get into it, starting with injury news, and we'll go from there. Blake Griffin is out. He's going to be out. So just for Detroit, this is going to help a lot of people in their rotation overall. Obviously, Andre Drummond. There's other pieces on Detroit that are going to be injured, where you're going to have potentially players from last year, like guys like Christian Wood, who stepped up in the preseason, stepped up last year towards the end of the season with the Bucks when it was just garbage time the last week of the season. Potentially, you're going to see more minutes for him moving in towards the power forward if Detroit continues to go big and play next to Andre Drummond. But obviously a bump for both of those guys, especially Drummond, who usually plays around 35 plus minutes, and now he's going to have to do that without Blake Griffin. Last year when that happened for the second half of the season for a good chunk of it, Andre Drummond was just a walking double-double, really a walking 20 and 10 and throwing a couple blocks. Mitchell Robinson is questionable. It seems like all indications are that he's going to be playing, though. Dwight Powell is out for Dallas. This is actually somewhat impactful, right? We know that Kristaps is there. Luka, this is a big team, but they paid Dwight Powell, and he's a guy that they have a lot of faith in. So the guys that are going to be filling in behind him, guys like Maxi Kleber, they'll be seeing a little bit of a bump. Dion Waiters is out today for Miami, so the guards there will see a little bit of a bump. Tyler Hero, the rookie who was taking over the preseason, right? Everybody was pumped up about him. He'll actually see a good amount of run. I imagine he gets all of his minutes at the shooting guard position, where Dion Waiters, for the most part, would be playing. They're now with Jimmy Butler, Justice Winslow. Those will be where those Dion Waiters minutes pretty much go. Taj Gibson for New York, he's questionable. I'm right now leaning that he doesn't play based on beat writer reports, but again, we should have to check in for this. New York signed pretty much every single power forward in free agency this offseason. Julius Randle, Morris, Taj Gibson. I'm sure there's another one that I'm missing. Oh yeah, there is. I'm pretty sure they saw like Bobby Portis Jr. too. They just signed everybody out there. So Taj Gibson being out gives a little bit of bump to all those guys, but they're just a mess in terms of depth for DFS purposes. Troy Brown Jr., he's going to be out today for Washington, a kid that they have a lot of faith in. Started to play last year. Wasn't anything in terms of productive, highly productive, but again, he was a rookie getting thrown into a terrible team in Washington, and he's still on that terrible team, but we'll see what he can do this year. Markieff Morris is questionable. Beat writers indicating that he's out, so this is a big piece. This is why, right? So if Markieff Morris is out and Blake Griffin, then yeah, Christian Wood, it's probably very hard to see Christian Wood not playing 20-plus minutes. If Markieff Morris is in, well, then you bump that down a little bit, so keep an eye on that news. That news is very important because Christian Wood is dirt cheap. Luke Kennard for Detroit. Luke Kennard is questionable. I'm assuming that he will play. Again, if Luke Kennard is in, he's going to be a good value. If indeed Blake Griffin's already out and Morris is out, it's just guys that are going to be down in that rotation. And Kennard has a really good chance of starting on this team. And then, yes, playing like he did last year, around 23 minutes per game. I would expect more than that today. Cam Johnson is going to be out for Phoenix today, so no debut for him. Ante Zizic is going to be out for Cleveland against Orlando. Nothing really big there all that much. Matthew Dellavedova is questionable. I'm leaning that he's going to be in. These are all like minimum price players that are really not going to affect you if you're playing them in DFS, but they'll affect the other players' rotation minutes around you. Raul Neto, he's likely to be out today. He's questionable for Philly. And Ryan Broekhoff, he is leaning out, questionable for Dallas, and that's another reason why for Dallas that guys like Maxi Kleber are going to be decent plays, because you have another guy who in Broekhoff, he'll play shooting guard but also small forward, so another guy who can kind of play that three mix. When they're getting a little bit bigger, you might have Luka playing some 4 minutes. I doubt it, but you might see that this season at points. I doubt it happens tonight. So those are the injury news as of right now, as of 5:50 when we started this. So let's get into the target offense sheet. If you are new to the channel, and I'll reduce this a little bit, the target offense sheet is something we just touch on each and every day. The target offense sheet is literally, it looks at defense versus position. Obviously, we're only one game into the season, so I'm still using last season's data. No, that is not a very defined and great sample. We know that the NBA's turnover, in terms of what the teams look like each and every year, it's probably like an average of 3 new players, probably closer to like 4 to 4.5 new players per team every single year. Probably 3.5, but that being said, these teams are going to play, and new coaches are just going to play totally different. The teams in the league wants to play faster and faster every single year. So in the yellow, you can see pace. That is from last year, projected pace. Team pace is just how quick they played, how many possessions per game. Projected pace is taking those possessions per game, incorporating into a little bit of a very easy equation, pretty much. Incorporating the league average pace into that, and then seeing how much faster or slower they're going to play off of each other based on just a boost up or down due to how each of those teams play. No back-to-backs tonight. As far as I'm concerned, there was only 4 teams last night. I don't imagine they're playing tonight, and they are not. So projected pace, you can just see Vegas team totals here. So what do you want to do? So what you want to do here is you want to see who's going to be in pace-up spots, where does Vegas think the most points are going to be scored, and then check on defense versus position, which, again, right now is a little bit skewed because teams like Brooklyn now have DeAndre Jordan, who's obviously a great shot blocker, a better defender than what they had last year. They're not the same old terrible team against the center position. Their depth is not that great now, right? They lose Ed Davis, but Jared Allen's still there, but having your half of your minutes or so filled up a guy like DeAndre Jordan instead of other guys on the court, or majority Jared Allen, it's going to benefit you a little bit more. So things like that are always going to be changing. There's always guys that are going to be new to teams. New York added like 4 power forwards with Mitchell Robinson there now to start. So their defense versus position against centers should surely get better this season, you would imagine. I mean, that's all they did was add bigs this year. I mean, those bigs, some of them not the greatest, probably most of them not the greatest at defending, but either way. So what we're seeing so far here today is you see that Sacramento, a team that really likes to play really, really fast, they're going to be facing Phoenix in what would be last year, if you use those paces, by far the fastest game paced on the slate. Both of these teams are projected to score the 2 highest amounts of points. Phoenix is tied with Utah today, but Sacramento projected to score the most points by Vegas, 117.75, and then Phoenix 116.25. I mean, this is good spots for these guys in this game. I mean, Sacramento came out with their lineup yesterday. Bagley is in it, so Bagley's going to be an interest of mine. He's not going to make this next sheet, but he's definitely an interest of mine. I'm only putting like 12 players on the next sheet. Bagley's an interest of mine. Devin Booker in this game is an interest of mine against a guy, and we know De'Aaron Fox doesn't play much defense, right, especially from his rookie year. Improved last year, but very hard not to improve from last year. So that's a game that you want to be targeting, Phoenix and Sacramento. Doesn't mean just take 5 players. And people have been asking me, Sal, do you stack an NBA? No, I don't. On an 11-game slate, I'm not going to stack. If you're stacking an NBA, there's one sole purpose. You want to project the game that goes into overtime. I get it. This is a very good game environment. You can take 2 to 3 players out of this game. I don't consider that a stack. I think taking 2 players out of the game is fine. I think 3 is borderline fine. 4 or more, I think then you're just hoping for overtime, in my opinion. It's not like baseball where you have to stack to correlate. It's not like the NFL where you have to stack to completely correlate. It's not. What you're doing there is you're just trying to amount the most points out of the best game environment. But there's other games on the slate that have 115 total, 115 and a half, 116.25, 111. Right? There's other games that are going to have a lot of points, so you don't have to try and squeeze these other players in there where there's better value and better overall upside in other games. So no, I do not stack an NBA, or at least I do not go out of my way to stack. The main reason in a strategy to stack is trying to just get the 6% of NBA games that go to overtime, because then you obviously have more minutes for your players and more opportunities to hit their ceilings and crush value. If you really want to talk about value for tournaments, I think it's a little bit stupid to be talking about value for tournaments. Your value of your 4x plus 10 or your 5x for GPPs not going to get you anywhere really. That $3,000 player, your 4x plus 10 even, it's not going to get you really too far most nights. So I think that's a spot that you should be targeting Phoenix versus Sacramento. I do think that Brooklyn is still going to be weak at center. Look, they had DeAndre Jordan, but I mean, Jared Allen's still going to be out there for half the game. So that's a pretty good spot for Karl Anthony Towns coming in. I do think that guys like Jokovic, and we'll talk about it. Jokovic, he's going to be going up against Portland, who, I mean, they added a couple of centers, right? They had Hassan Whiteside, who's a very good shot blocker, but how long is he going to be out there? 20 minutes? Like, I think that's a very good spot for Nikola. We'll talk about other spots, San Antonio facing New York and all these bigs. We'll see how many are actually out there. Mitch Robinson, I do think is going to be a good defender, but I do also think his inexperience against Lamarcus Aldridge will lead to some nice buckets for Lamarcus Aldridge. So you can see pretty much everybody against Chicago last year had success. Whatever position you were playing, you're a point guard, you're a shooting guard. I think that will probably continue, but they get Charlotte today, and Charlotte's no world beater in terms of what they have on their offense. I do think there's going to be pieces of Charlotte, like Dwayne Bacon, going forward this season. You have to watch just pieces of it and see how they can kind of mature and gel. They were playing very well last year. Obviously, losing Kemba is a big piece that is not going to be good, but they were playing very well last year at points for what they had as a team. Outside of that, I mean, other places that just stand out with like a sore thumb, Phoenix's center spot. I think Marvin Bagley Jr., even if he's not going to play a lot of the 5, he plays the 4 and the 5 and switches off. I think Dedmon is out there now, which I think Dedmon's a very underrated center. I do like Dedmon in this spot. I do like Marvin Bagley in this spot, and the game environment obviously sheds itself to go that way. You have Philly, you have Al Horford returning to Boston. Al Horford last year, Boston was weak, and now they lose Al Horford, but they were weak against power forwards. Al Horford is going to be playing the 4 right next to Joel Embiid, so it should be a good spot for Al Horford, but again, that's a team that has a lot of mouths to feed. So this is the target offense sheet. You can get this sheet along with my other model, my main model of projections, over on Patreon, linked down below. Let's move over to early interest. So these are some of my early interests. There are 22 teams, and it's 550 on the second game in the first big slate of the NBA season. This is not the only players that I'm playing. There's probably going to be a laundry list of other players that I'm playing. I'm going to try and do some crunches after this, but add to this list, and I guess I can add to this list right now, a guy that I definitely know that I'm going to be having interest in, and hopefully they don't keep him as Marvin Bagley III anymore, but let's see. I think they probably keep him as Marvin Bagley III, unless I'm... Yep, there you go, Marvin Bagley III. So I guess you're going to get to see his value as well, but there you go. Marvin Bagley III, we'll see what his price point of 7,200. I guess he's already priced up. I was hoping, last year he was in like the 5K range, the 6K range at points. I was hoping that, just off the top of my head, I didn't recall the price. I was hoping he would be like 6,800, but you see 7,200, which makes his value not as great. But again, those are things that I have to adjust because there's not as many players there anymore, and the matchup is better than it probably seems. Karl Anthony Towns at the top. Yeah, so here's the thing. I play centers, and I try and get as many power forwards and centers into my lineup. So the guys who are labeled as power forward / center and can fit in the power forward and forward spot, more times than not, especially if they're in the cheap end, I will put them in my lineup. Like Christian Wood tonight, if there's no Markieff Morris, he's probably going to be a power forward in a lot of my lineups. Why, Sal? Well, forwards and power forwards closer to the rim score the most fantasy points. Point guards sometimes are right there, but centers and power forwards score the most fantasy points, especially centers. Just easier rebounding opportunities, easier double-doubles, easier blocks on drive and penetration. Easier and one opportunities. I mean, 2-foot layups, right? I get as many centers. That's a big piece of people who don't know how to play NBA. If you're coming over from NFL or whatever it might be, not doing proper lineup construction, putting shooting guards in your utility spot, putting shooting guards in your guard spot, honestly. I mean, you should try and get as many point guards and centers into your lineup as possible to just absolutely exceed the ceiling and the floor that you can have. So Karl Anthony Towns, yes, I like him against Brooklyn. I know DeAndre Jordan's there. They still have Jared Allen. They still really don't have that much forward depth, right? They don't have Kevin Durant right now. They don't have that much forward depth at all. Karl Anthony Towns should not be too tough of a matchup, but he is the most expensive player on the slate. So when you get $500 less, Nikola Jokic against Portland, sure, Hassan Whiteside's there. I'm not too worried about Hassan Whiteside in this matchup. Nikola Jokic, first game of the season, there shouldn't be any load management type stuff that was being speculated. I imagine 33, 34 minutes for him tonight. $9,600 is a fair price point. Kyrie Irving, $8,900 is a really good spot against Minnesota, who struggled at defending the guard position last year. And I don't think they've done too much to kind of stop that. I mean, they get rid of Derrick Rose, so that helps, right? But I don't think they've done too much to try and improve and get better at their guard position. $8,900 for Kyrie, surely expensive, but I mean, for this talent, and especially the matchup that he's going to be having in this one, it projects out to be a very nice pace spot as well. A team total of 115 is one of the top 4 on the slate. Yes, I like Brooklyn this season in general, even without Kevin Durant. I like them to make the playoffs, but I like Kyrie in this individual spot. Devin Booker in that very good game environment we were talking about for $200 less, $8,700. I much prefer Kyrie Irving. I feel like he's more stable to produce. But Devin Booker on Phoenix, he has some help now in terms of what they did this offseason, but and it'll be kind of fun to watch how those players work off of each other. But again, it's $8,700. I prefer Kyrie in that range, but I do think based on the game environment, it's worth getting to. Andre Drummond at $8,400. They continue to just mess this guy's price up. That's just a smash price in my opinion. Andre Drummond with no Blake Griffin, potentially no Markieff Morris. He's going to be playing with Christian Wood, Reggie Jackson, who's probable for this game, like Luke Kennard. It's going to go through Andre Drummond. Like $8,400 for a guy who just misses so many layups and gets his easy offensive rebound. Like Andre Drummond, he's up there in offensive rebounding because if you watch any of these games, and I did a ton because I played him a lot last year, he'll shoot like a 1-foot layup, and he's by far the biggest player on the court half the time. He'll shoot just like a 1-foot shot from the post, and it'll miss, but he'll just like tip it in after that. It's just, and he'll miss it like twice. It's the best to see Andre Drummond miss layup, offensive rebound, miss layup, offensive rebound, dunk, and one. That is the best sequence in all of NBA is when he does that. So $8,400 for this guy when there's no Blake Griffin. Look, the game's probably going to be paced down. Detroit didn't really do much in terms of changing personnel at all to really want to play faster. Indy, the same thing. Indy, I mean, they've added players, the Pacers for sure. The team has been totally changed around, but nobody who's really going to be pushing tempo, I don't believe so, unless they just change their overall rhythm. They've had some talks about that, but yeah, Drummond's in a fantastic spot in my opinion. Zach Lavine should play all the minutes in the world tonight. There's injuries for Chicago. There's going to be rookies playing out there. But, I mean, this is just like his team now. Obviously, you still have Laurie out there, but this is his team to head finally. Doesn't seem like Chris Dunn's even going to be playing based on, I mean, last year, the way that it ended pretty bad. Now they pick up a rookie in the draft that they're high on based on the preseason. I don't even know if Chris Dunn steps on the court tonight. We'll see. But, yeah, Zach Lavine's in a good spot. Lamarcus Aldridge, talked about him earlier. The matchup, I think, is better than it's expected, even with New York being a very big team. Lamarcus Aldridge at 7,300 for a guy who, again, like I was saying earlier, he's a power forward / center. So Lamarcus Aldridge, even if Jakob Poeltl starts at center tonight, Lamarcus Aldridge will play a lot of center minutes, and if not, he'll play the 4. But he's a guy who's going to play a lot of center minutes, and he's $7,300, and he's going to play like 35 minutes. So, yeah, I like Lamarcus Aldridge. Aaron Gordon, 6,400. His price range always hovered in the low 6s, the high 5s last year. He gets a really good matchup against a historically bad, I think the worst ever bad defense in the league, Cleveland, and they did not do much to add that. I mean, they added Garland in the draft. They didn't really do anything else, though. They still have Sexton. They still have Cedi Osman, 2 of the worst individual defenders. I think Sexton, the worst defender in all of basketball. Cedi Osman was like bottom 5. They still got those guys on the team. Sure, Kevin Love will be back, and that'll help, but he's no guy, especially getting out wide. He really can't defend all that well, where Aaron Gordon will be taking more threes. Aaron Gordon's fine. Al Horford's like the very meh of like the slate for me. I have him on here, but it's a Boston team that has just so much. Like, it's so hard for one of you to have a ceiling game, but again, when Joel Embiid's not on the court, I'm sure there'll be rotations where Al Horford's playing for in this game if he plays 32 minutes, like 10 to 12 of those at center. Maybe it's closer to 10, but $5,600, I do like that, especially if you're getting a guy closer to the rim. The problem is his rebounding upside is probably going to go way down. He's not playing next to, I don't even know, the other centers from last year. I forget the guy's name that just start for the Celtics. Now he's playing next to Joel Embiid, who's just an absolute rebounding monster, a block monster, so it's not as much upside to go around for Al Horford. So I probably take Al Horford off this early interest list, honestly, the more that I talk about it. Daniel Tice, that's like one of the guys he was playing next to last year. Like, come on. Spencer Dinwiddie, 5,400 is too cheap for Dinwiddie, honestly. Look, Dinwiddie now has to play off of Kyrie Irving, which clearly takes away the types of ceiling games and overall production that Spencer Dinwiddie can have with Kyrie Irving, and probably lead this team in shots. But $5,400 for a guy that you paid and a guy that you feel really confident in, and once again, a guy in a very good matchup, I like that. Christian Wood at 4,800, he's too cheap if indeed Markieff Morris is going to be out. And then you also have already Blake Griffin out. I was hoping he would be like below 5K, but even at 4,800, based on just his point per minute production in his career, it's really hard not to imagine him having a solid game here. Maxi Kleba is going to be filling in for Dallas, and he should see more minutes, maybe even starting anyways, but with no Dwight Powell, I imagine he sees a good amount of minutes in the mid-20s or so. Aaron Holiday, 3,400. Look, Aaron Holiday on this Indy team now, he's going to have a lot of opportunity. I think he sees over 20 minutes. He should continue to have a lot of opportunity. For $3,400, he's a point guard, so I probably don't take my risks at that cheap of a price point with a point guard as opposed to a forward, because you're really relying on their confidence in their shot as opposed to a forward who will just back his way into rebounds and easy baskets and maybe a block. So I like his skill and upside for the season. But guys like Luke Kennard for Chicago, who should see a lot of minutes, or Cornette. We already talked about Kennard. Luke Cornette, who's 3,300. Guys like Myers Leonard, who's 3,100. Myers Leonard is going to see a lot of time for Miami today. He's just going to have to. I mean, based on some injuries there, but also like they acquired him for a reason. He's a good player that they think can improve their team. I think Myers Leonard plays around 20 minutes. And at 3,100, if he plays around 20 minutes against a Memphis team that is battling injuries, and they're a big team and they want to play slower, but for the most part, 20 plus minutes. If he sees like 22 minutes today for Myers Leonard at $3,100, that's a guy who can score 30 points in that time. And that's what you need in DraftKings to really win a tournament. Like, even if you're playing a $3,100 player, if he gets you 17 points, it sounds good because you're 5xing, but you're not winning a tournament with that. So like these guys down here, they're just extreme values maybe for your cash lineups, but guys who should play 20 plus minutes, Luke Cornett, Myers Leonard, right around 20, 24 minutes. And again, if they have a decent game, not the greatest of matchups, Cornett has a little bit of a better matchup, only really Zeller down there, Marvin Williams maybe, but I mean, he's like 35, but Zeller to kind of defend him. But yeah, these are the guys that if they get you like 26 to 28 to 30 fantasy points, you can be live to win a tournament. And obviously, they're very cheap to allow you to fit in your studs. And then lastly, we added at the beginning Marvin Bagley here. I'm going to be looking into Marvin Bagley's a little bit more. The price is a little bit more than I would like. I was hoping he would come in cheap like he did all of last year, but I guess the secret's out on my Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley, Mitchell Robinson, and then I'm probably going to say Pascal Siakam are my 3 favorite players in the league right now. They're just so fun to watch. They're all young, obviously. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. These are early interests. Again, I labeled what here? Like 16 players that are interesting to me that'll probably be in a player pool. Maybe we take out Al Horford, like we said, at the end of the night. If you want to see my entire model, see all the projections, the projected value for the people that like to look at that, that is all on Patreon, link down below. I do have NFL content, a ton of NFL content going out. I put about 15 hours of work into creating my YouTube content and about 25 hours of work a week going into my Patreon content between NFL and NBA now. It's probably closer to about 30 to 35 hours a week now with the NBA stuff coming. So appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. This is the October 23rd NBA video, 11 game slate. I will be on the Awesemo YouTube channel at 9:30 a.m. with Josh Engelman if you want to tune in for that. For right now, my name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Above my head, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, I do ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a good amount to reach more people. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's over there. Right in the corner is my @SalVetriDFS Twitter. And then above, you'll find my Patreon link. You can click on that if you want more exclusive content for me. Or a video is going to pop up, so why don't you check that one out as well. I think it's going to be beneficial for you. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.